Welcome to Beads, Baubles and Jewels. I'm Katie Hacker, and Leslie Rogalski is back with a design featuring metal elements. These are great bracelets, Leslie.
Thank you. The centerline components that I'm showing you are made to fit together with strands of beads. You don't need to be a stitcher. If you can manage a needle and thread with little beads, it's really just stringing and paying attention to the holes that you come in and out of to connect the components.
Okay, well, how do we get started?
All right, so I'm going to start with the top component. You see there's a little loop here that the clasp is going to be attached to, and I have a stopper bead coming from back to front. I've strung 6 beads. I'm going from front to back to the next component.
So the reason that's important is because if you went through front to back and then back to front, your strand would be sort of situated in a weird way.
You do it so that when you cross over from one hole to the other, it shows on the back. So the method of stringing is multiple times through, so your last pass ends up on the back.
Oh, okay.
So that you can see the little thread bridges on the one that I had started for the middle section, so that there's a front and a back to this bracelet. So that's the method to my madness of the stringing. So I've gone from back to front, front to back. Now I'm just going to bring my thread around to hold it, and I'm going to sew back up through the column that I just stitched, and I'm using Japanese cylinder beads because they sit really nicely.
And you could create any type of pattern with this, but
you absolutely
doing rainbow
can.
stripes here.
I'm just doing stripes here. Now there's no thread coming through the column from front to back, so I'm actually going to come through so that this is, can you see that there's the loop, so there's a thread going on both sides of the component? I'm going to go sew through back again through the same column. So because cylinders have nice generous holes, but you do want to use an 11 or 12 needle, my last pass through is going from front to back so I can cross over on the underside of this.
And you can use any type of beading thread?
I'm using a thread with a little give. You can use Fireline, D-Weight of another brand, Nymo or something like that, all right? And now I'm going to come up through the second hole, and I'm going to repeat with 6 beads of whatever color you want. If you were following a pattern, you would string a different pattern, so I'm going to go for my yellow. I have my orange, I have a nice rainbow. Picking up 6, the same number, because of the shape of the component, the way these fit together, this is the same number of beads in each column across. When you start to work for the middle one, and I'll bring this over here, this is graduated because of the shape of the components. I figured out that you start with 11 on the outside, then 12, 13, 14, all the way to 18, and then you degraduate down the other side, you decrease to make it fit. And whatever design you use, you're going to make sure that that works. You can add more, but you do want to make sure that there's an increase and decrease for this particular shape. And I want you to also notice that there's different metal colors.
Right, you could choose any color metal that works with the components you're using.
That's right. And the tutorial has really nice, big, giant illustrations for you to follow, and words if you're that kind of a learner.
Yeah, that makes it easy too. And I like the way you use some different finishes on the seed beads. It seems, or maybe they're not different, but to my eye, it looks like they're a little bit different.
You can. There's a little bit of AB in some, opaque. Some of the examples that I brought have a little bit of metallic and some shimmer to them. To end it, the end components have that little loop. And we could look at the finished bracelets if you'd like to show. Just jump ring through a length of chain on either side. The size is going to depend on what size you need. You definitely want the bracelet to sit on top. You want more of the bracelet to show and less of the chain. And just use your jump rings to attach a clasp. And It's good to use chain that has a link that's large enough to be able to hook your clasp into. I have a little lobster clasp here. So the jump rings attach one end to the ends and another jump ring to attach to the end with your lobster clasp.
And you could really create any patterns here. I mean, and this is the situation where you could use graph paper and draw out a new pattern if you wanted to.
You can. Keep in mind that they're not quite straight across when you use the graph paper, but you can absolutely play with it that way to create your different patterns and figure out how to do it. There are very cleverly an odd number of holes. So you can always have a center line in your design. So you can come up and make diamond shapes, and it just helps out with your design when you're playing around.
Sure, and you wouldn't definitely have to limit yourself to a bracelet with this. You can make a necklace. I could see a really long piece at the front of a necklace and then having some fringe at the bottom. That would be really cool.
Fringe would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be really fun. And so I think something that makes these special to these pieces that you've made is the even spacing of the holes on the components. It makes it perfect for size 11, or did you also say 15
It's all about engineering.
seed beads?
You certainly could. You certainly could. I think something bigger than that might be a little large, but you know what? I haven't tried skipping a space yet. And bringing in some other sizes might be really fun to have something in the middle. Maybe just add a little texture or chunk to it. But it really is made for the smaller seed beads. You can use regular size 11s. The cylinders, it just kind of screams for those, I think. So we have the rhodium plate, the gold plate, and the rose gold, which is just so yummy now.
Really fun and trendy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So on these strands, or just before we go, I want to point out, you do have to pass through these several times to make them stable.
Yes.
And when you attach your next piece, you would want to be really careful that you're attaching front to front.
Yes, pay attention to where the back is, where I told you that there's that little thread bridge that comes across where you move from hole to hole. You want to make sure when you attach the next one that they are both facing up. And to end it, you're going to remove the stopper bead. You're just going to sew back through a couple times through following existing thread paths and trim it. There's not a lot of weight or pull against this, so you don't have to make any knots. You can just weave through existing thread paths and finish up weave in your tail and weave in your working thread.
Thank you so much, Leslie.